These are the highlights from Heritage's US Coin Small Cents Showcase auction. We'll start off with an interesting coin that not a lot of people tend to give attention to, largely because its older sibling, the 1922 No D penny, steals all of the limelight. But this is instead not the No D, but the weak D 1922 cent instead. In lieu of no trace of the D mint mark being found, here you will see some remnant of what was supposed to be a D mint mark from the Denver Mint. This coin is graded by NGC as MS64 red and brown and was sold at auction for $720. The Indian Head Cent series has some truly spectacular variety coins available to the collector and scholars interested in such things. One of the more dramatic of these is the 1869 over 69 repunched date variety. The initial 6 and 9 of the date can clearly and unambiguously be seen towards the top of both numbers, clearly identifying the variety coin without fail. This stunning example, though it may lack some of the red mint luster that makes for good photos, is all the same graded by PCGS as AU58 and sold at auction for $1,170. When strictly discussing regular issue circulation coins, the 1931 S Lincoln Cent is the second lowest mintage coin in the series, after only the more coveted 1909 S VDB issue, and coins of this issue were typically well struck, if not always fully struck, as we can see on this coin, along with the typical contact and bag marks keeping it from achieving a higher technical grade. Not that the grade of MS66 red by PCGS is anything to sneer at, mind you, as its closing price at auction of $2,040 also testifies to. And then we have an interesting and relatively modern entry onto this list, a 2009 Formative Years Cent from the Denver Mint. Not a rare coin in its own right, but this example holds the distinction of being one of the finest graded. At the grade of PCGS MS69 red, it is one of only 7 coins at the service to attain such a grade, with none finer known. By auction's conclusion, it had achieved a closing price of $2,400. The total mintage of copper-nickel cents in 1864 took place early on in the year, at least no later than March, when production for the denomination was then switched to the more familiar bronze composition. The proof coins likely had a final distribution of 800 to 1,000 coins, most of which were included in proof sets of various descriptions. This example, graded by PCGS as proof 65, stands as a survivor of that particular issue, sold here at auction for the sum of $2,640. One of the more popular varieties from the Indian Head Penny series is the 1888 over 7 over-date coin, thanks, no doubt, to its inclusion as a Red Book listed variety. The two main identifying features for this coin are 2 small remnants of the underlying number 7 to the top and bottom left of the last 8 in the date, as well as a cud above the E in United, all features that become more difficult to spot in lower grade coins. This example is graded as F12 by PCGS and was sold by auction's close for $2,880. The 1894 Indian Head Cent tends to blend in somewhat with the homogeny of the 1890 pennies overall, despite actually being the lowest mintage cent for that particular decade, although the elevated popularity that same status almost inevitably infers also tends to transfer to the proof coin of the same date as well, simply by virtue of association. This coin is is a good example of the proof issue though, graded by PCGS as proof 66 red. It managed to attain a closing price at auction of $3,600. A list of extraordinary Lincoln cents, or small cents as the case may be, would feel incomplete without a mention of the infamous 1955 Doubled Obverse penny, a coin that manages to transcend collecting interests and is arguably the most famous variety coin from the US Mint. This example was graded by NGC as MS63 brown, and by auction's final call had sold for the sum of $3,720 in total. 1909 was the second only year that the Indian head cent would be struck at the San Francisco Mint, as well as the final year that it would be struck at all, as the Lincoln cent would be released later in the same year. Consequently, it also has the lowest overall mintage for the series, at only 309,000 coins. Now, coins have a tendency to display a wood grain appearance, similar to those of the mid-1860s. This example is no exception, graded as MS65 red and brown to see a closing price at auction of $4,320. In circulating grades, the 1929 S-cent is one of the easiest coins to obtain in the series before 1935, though generally speaking, coins are not very well struck for the date, though of course in higher and gem grades, most of these generalizations stop being strictly applicable, with only 8 red coins finer on the combined population report as of making this MS66 plus red graded cent would make a prized acquisition for most collectors. For that privilege, this piece was sold at auction for $7,800. The 1945 cent was struck partially from recovered or spent shell casings returned from Europe after 1944 and 45. The issue is known for numerous quality challenges, all of which seem to have eluded this particular coin. Of the 266 million coins minted, PCGS and NGC combined list only 10 examples tied for the top grade of MS68 red, just as this coin is. When it passed over the auctioneer's block, it was sold for a total of $8,700. The 1907 Indian head cent is one of the most easily obtainable coins in the series, with a record-setting mintage of over 108 million coins. However, the proof coin for that year is the exact opposite, as it has the lowest mintage for the proof cent in this era. Our current example resides in a PCGS slab with the grade of proof 67 red and brown, and understandably caught the attention of quite a few bidders, closing for $9,480 by the auctioneer's final call. And then concluding our list for what is undeniably a key date for the series, the 1914 D Lincoln cent, with a mintage no greater than 1,193,000 coins, it has earned its reputation as one of the most difficult coins to obtain for your collection, especially when speaking of higher grades, where competition for these coins can be fierce indeed. This example is a very crisply struck MS65 red and brown example from PCGS that was able to achieve a closing price at auction of $9,900. Subscribe to WNN and feel free to watch another video about small cents right here next. For the World Numismatic News, I am Numisman saying thank you for watching, keep collecting, and have a fantastic day.